Hello YouTube! Welcome to the sixth video in this React testing series. During this video, we are going to learn how to test components that fetch data from our server. We will also test how to post data to our server and test loading scenarios and error scenarios. Now, to help us out during that journey, we are going to use a library called MSW, Mock Service Worker. And when we are using Mock Service Worker, we are going to mock our HTTP call itself. We don't need to worry about mocking Axios or fetch. If you don't know what I mean by mocking Axios or fetch, you can see these two lines that I have highlighted. In the first one, I'm mocking Axios. In the second one, I'm mocking fetch. And then, as you can see, all my tests in this component will be relying on Axios a bit too much. Usually, we say that Axios and fetch are implementation details from you. Your users don't care if you use one or the other, they just care that they will receive the data and then they will send the data to the server via a post. And that's what we should be testing. I can go a bit deeper in this component, but as you can see, I'm always mocking Axios in order for something to happen. Now, I ask you, what will happen if I go to my Axios implementation in this component, I comment it out, and I just uncomment this fetch implementation. Now, my example is going to use fetch, which means that all my tests will fail, and I will have to also refactor my tests to use fetch in order to have some confidence in that test. It would be much better if I was using MSW and I was mocking the HTTP call, so my tests will still be passing. And by the end of this video, I will comment one and then comment the other, and you will see that our tests will pass with both our Axios implementation and our fetch implementation. And that's one of the beauties of using something like MSW. You can see over here in their documentation at the bottom that they have a saying similar to what I said. They say, you don't expect your customers to mock fetch, do you? So don't expect your tests either. Now that you understand one of the benefits of using MSW instead of mocking Axios or fetch, you are ready to look into the demo I prepared for today. And if you refresh this page, you can see a few photos. You can see this as a small photo gallery. Every time I refresh the page, we will get new photos and some random titles over here and some photo ID over there. Nothing special up to this moment. You also saw that when I click refresh, I have this loading spinner over there, and my server is taking around 1 second to reply to us. At the same time, I can come over here to my name and type, for example, Bruno Antunes, and as you can see, I'm performing HTTP calls to my server using query parameters in order to then receive from my server this Bruno Antunes. So we can test all of those things in our video today. Because I know some of you will be asking for post calls, I have also this one, which we can click on the add to favorites, and after 1 second, our server will reply saying, okay, it was added to the favorites, and our text changes from add to favorites to remove from favorites, and we can do that to every single element in this list. Now, with that being said, I also prepared an error over there. So if we go to my API and uncomment this small snippet of code, you will see that I can click refresh, and after the loading, we receive this error message. So I think for the demos today, we have mostly everything that your applications will need: a loading status, get calls, post calls, and errors for us to test out. And MSW will help us quite a lot in that journey. At this stage, we are ready to install MSW. And in case your component is using fetch, I will install a polyfill for it. And the way you import that polyfill is to create in your jest.config.js something similar to what I have in my line number 9, and then in that file jestSetup.ts, I will import that polyfill. From this moment on, it doesn't matter if your component is using fetch or Axios, the tests we are going to do will be exactly the same. So let me go to this newly created file called good.photolist.spec.tsx, and we will start to create our tests over here. And that means I will leave this file as I have in my repository so you can compare the two of them. Now, I will go to the MSW documentation, and in order to create our mock server, you will see that they also have an example using TypeScript over here. And basically what we need to do is to create our setup worker, which in Node.js will not be called a worker, it will be called a setup server, because it's in Node.js and we don't have service workers there. And then we will do in our first call a get, the second one will be a post, and then we have generics over here, which is very, very useful. In the case of a get, this first parameter doesn't really matter because this is the body. The second parameter will be the JSON we return, and that one is important for us. Then we will have the endpoint itself. In our case, it will be /API/photos for the first one. And then you have something very similar to Express, if you ever did Express, with request, response, and the context. So I think we are ready to start to create our mock server and then play a bit with it. So let me start to import our setup server from MSW/node and import REST from MSW. Now that those two are imported, I can start to create our server. So let's do const server equals to setup server, and over here inside is where I will pass our handlers, which is our mocked calls. So I will do rest.get, and I will do the generics in a few seconds. Okay, so let's focus first on the endpoint itself, and I can even show you the implementation, so you can see that the endpoint is /API/photos, and then we have a query parameter. In the endpoint itself, we will not put the query parameter. We will handle that in the body of our handler in a few seconds from now. So let's just do a Control-V of that one and do request, response, and then over here a context. And now I will just return our response, and I will do context JSON and send an array for now. As I said, the first parameter for our get, we really don't care about it, so we can use the default request body from MSW. The second parameter we care about because that's what we are going to return, and that will be our photo array. So I can import these two now and go to my old file just to copy the mock that we had before. So if I go to my old file and I scroll a little bit to the bottom, you can see that my first mock was this one. So I can even copy that one for now and put it over here. And the beauty of using TypeScript with those generics is that if now I don't put, for example, the ID, you will see that I have a TypeScript error. So as long as you keep your interfaces like this photo updated with whatever your server is returning, mock server, MSW, will help you catch those type of details which are very, very important. Now, with that one over here, we can start our server. And to start the server, we want to start it before any test runs. So we will do before all, and we will just do server.listen. So the server starts to listen to requests. After the server, after the tests run, we want to destroy our server. So we will do server.close. For the ones of you that already looked into MSW, probably you saw something like this. After each, and you saw server.resetHandlers. So I'm not forgetting about it. I will talk about it in 10 minutes time, but I will not put it for now. So people that don't know what that is will understand seeing a problem happening, and then I will add that line, okay? I'm not forgetting that line for the ones of you that already know a bit about MSW. Now that we have that thing over here, we can even go to our old tests and probably copy the first test that we have over here, because it's nothing extraordinary. We are just rendering the component, waiting for the loading spinner to disappear, and then I'm just expecting to have hello world, and if you see, that will be the title. So it makes sense to even go ahead and copy, I did a mistake, and copy this test over our new file. And just to avoid doing control dot everywhere, I will just copy the imports because it will be probably a little bit faster for the video. And now I will just paste these imports over there. And if I run this test, you will see that this test is now passing. So let me just do good.photo list.spec.tsx. And we have our first test passing using mock service worker, which is quite nice. Now, if you saw, we have this response and we are passing. Oh, what happened over here? I did a Control V. My bad, sorry. So I will run this again. But what I was saying is that we have this response over here. And you see that I'm sending a context.json. I can go ahead and do the following: context.delay, for example, and say 100 milliseconds or whatever time that you want the delay to happen. So this response will not be sent before it elapses 100 milliseconds. It might be useful for some of your tests, so I will leave it over there for now, and then we will remove it in a little bit. Now that we have that one created, we have something into our next test, which is when we type in this your name, for example, UAT, you will see that I will have UAT over here, and then I will have the title. So we need to grab the query parameters using our MSW, because if you see my call is literally, if I do another letter, it's a query parameter with the name. So let's go to the MSW documentation on the get started. If you scroll to the bottom, they have something called query parameters. Clicking there, we will have an example saying request.url.searchparameters.get. In case you have multiple parameters, for example, like this, name equals to Bruno and name equals to João, for example. These are multiple parameters for the name, so you want to receive an array. If you want that, and you scroll a little bit to the bottom, you will see that they have a get all. In our case, it will only be one name, so I will use get only. I can copy this bit, so you don't see me typing all of them all over again, and I can change my mock server to now have the following. So const name equals to get, and I will do name, and in case we don't receive anything, we will do unknown, like our real thing is doing, and we can do name plus, and now we have that. Because in our first call we don't have anything, I will have to edit unknown over here, right? If I don't put the unknown there, like I will do now, you will see that my test will fail. Then if I put the unknown, my test will then pass. All right, so we can see that our unknown is already being used. Then our second test, if I go to our previous file and I scroll a bit to the bottom, it will be using that query parameter quite a lot, because we will type in our text box, I will type the name Bruno, and then I expect the name Bruno to be here. But because we were mocking data with jest before, we were just mocking Axios to have new loaded data, and the way we were testing it was to make sure that Axios have been called with that specific URL. But that is a lot of implementation details, right? Still, I will copy this one and do the changes we need to do. So I will copy this over here, right? And I will paste it over there. And we can delete already this test because, as I said, is not useful. I can delete this mock from Axios because now our MSW is handling our query parameters over here. So that looks fantastic for now. I'm expecting the loading to disappear. After the loading disappear, I can expect Bruno, column, hello, world. And if I run this test once again, you will see that this test will now be passing. But if I now go and I delete my delay, you will see that I will have a bug. Okay, let me just remove this delay from here. I will leave it commented for you. But you will see that now I will find a bug in my component that was only possible to find because we are using MSW. Can you guess what the bug is? Stop the video and try to understand. I will tell you the answer right now. So basically, what's happening over here is that our component is having a loading state, all right? And we start the first call. Then we do R, because my name is Bruno, right? So we do B, and we have a loading state, but immediately after we will receive the response. But still we type BRUNO. So we have 5 calls in the queue, but the first one finalized with the B. So we no longer will have the loading at that state. And if you see, that's actually what's happening over here. If I scroll to the top, you will see that I have a gigantic stack over here, but what's happening is that I didn't wait until the last letter. After a while, that loading spinner just disappeared. So we know that actually we have a bug in our component that was only able to be found in this case because we are using MSW. So we can go to our component itself, and instead of using the loading as true and false, we will now keep how many calls are pending at this stage. So let's start it as 0, and then we will do L from loading, and we will do plus L, or if you prefer L plus 1, and we will change over here to be L minus 1. And at this stage, if I run my tests again, I will only remove the loading spinner after all the calls are finalized. Another way to solve this type of problem, and it's probably cleaner, is to cancel the previous calls that are being performed. It's also a very good solution, probably even better than mine, but at least I show you that we found that bug in the component by using MSW, and where we were mocking Axios, we didn't find that problem, right? So now we can go over here, and the next test will be about an error. So we can go over here, copy this one, and we will do the same thing we did before. We will copy, remove the stuff we don't care about, and then we will do that test. So I will just go ahead, copy this one. I can remove this a little bit so it doesn't bother us. And now this is the moment that these after each will make sense. Okay, so what will happen is I will mock the same call, so our /API/photos for that specific test. I will mock that one again, and instead of returning a perfect JSON with a 200, I will return a 500. And when I return a 500 over there, well, these tests will have now that bit. If I run tests after that one, they will all be returning 500. And because we don't want that to happen, running this line over here called resetHandlers, what it will do is it will reset the handlers to whatever we passed over here in the setup server as the handlers. I can go ahead and do resetHandlers, and if I have 10 handlers here, those will be the handlers after I do the resetHandlers. That's why usually after each test we reset the handlers, so we go back to the handlers we gave at the beginning of the test. Let's go to the documentation, and over here, if we scroll to the bottom a little bit, they will have something called response. If you click on the response, you will see that we will have something called a status, and by default, as I was saying a minute ago, it will be 200. So we can just go over here, we can even copy this bit and change it slightly. So I will do the following. I will copy that bit and I will do the following. I will say server.use, which means that I'm going to use a new handler, okay? And I will wrap everything. And so now this endpoint /API/photos will be this new one. I overwrite the one that already existed, all right? So I don't even need this for this specific one. I don't need a delay. And what I'm going to do, it will be a context.status. I will say, for example, a 500. And when I'm going to return this, I will return this as a message with a string. So I will say message string. And over here, I will just say message, and I will say, sorry, something happened. And this is good enough because if you see the implementation of our component, what it's going to do is to grab the message and show that message. So the message we will want to see now will be, sorry, something happened, okay? And I will just click on refresh. The loading will disappear, but when the loading disappears, I can delete this one because this one is not needed. So when this thing disappears, I will see the server say sorry. In my case, it will be sorry, something happened. All right. And now running this test, you will see that we will be good to go once again. Now, the last bit that you are probably wanting to watch will be our post, right? As you saw, this test now passed. And the post, we can go back to the beginning of this bit over here, and we have the post over there. We can go to our component as well. And our component, the way we are doing posts at the bottom, it will be using Axios. Let me just see if I find it. It's over here, right? We are using Axios and we are going to go to the API/favorite. And then I'm just going to post the photo and then I will say the favorite to be true or false. And the only thing we need to do is to do something very similar to what we did here. We will do this server use, and in this case, we will do the API/favorites. We can do it like that. Or if you prefer, I think it makes a lot more sense, we will do the post over here in our setup server. So if in the future we have other places that need the favorites, they are already mocked to this test. So let me do that. Let me say rest.post, and it will be /API/favorites, favorites, and I will do rec response context. And this bit over here will be our request response and context. So we just need to say, okay, we will receive a photo and we will return a photo. That's what we are going to do, right? If you look into my implementation, that's what I do. I will post a photo with the current favorite value, all right? And then I will receive again a photo and one of the properties will be the favorite. So in reality, I only care about the favorite, but let's return everything. Let's go over here to our test. And now I can grab the photo from the request.body. And as you can see, the body is already of type photo because we typified it like that. Now we can return just the response context.json, and I will do the following: photo, favorite, and I will do the photo.favorite. So if it is true, it will become false, and the opposite is also the same thing. Now, I'm not sure if this is favorite or favorite, so let me double check. It's favorite. I can even copy paste so I don't make a mistake over here, and it's favorite. And now that bit is created, so we have our post mock created. We can go to our old file and copy our last test. And the last test will be about adding stuff to the favorite. So let's see it in action over here. Let me refresh. It will be to add something to the favorites and remove that something from the favorites. So let's copy this test like we did before. And the only thing we need to then do is to remove the mock server we did. So let's go here to the bottom. Let's remove this mock server. Well, not mock server, this mock Axios calls. And we will click to add the favorites. We will wait for the add to favorites to disappear. And then we will make sure that the remove from favorites is on the screen and that the add to favorites is not on the screen. I can even do a small delay in this one as well. So let's do context.delay of 200 milliseconds, for example, to simulate our real API. And if you run that test will now pass. Now, the last thing I want to do for us is to go ahead and move our Axios calls to fetch, and something failed. Let me just double check what failed over here. So it can't find the add to favorites. It makes sense. Look, I'm seeing now line 39. I forgot to uncomment line 39, which was a good thing in reality, because now I showed you that because I didn't use this after each, what is going to happen is that our test where we have the server.use put our /API/photos call returning an error 500 saying sorry, something happened. And that's actually what's happening to us now is when our last test runs, so when our last test starts to run, it will have that call as a 500 and it will fail. So in a way, I'm glad it was because I forgot about it, but I'm glad I didn't uncomment this one, because if I now run that one, you will see that my tests will now pass. So you even had a real world case where we need that reset handlers. Thanks God that my brain is not that great and I forgot about that. But with that being said, the last thing I want to do is to just go to my real component. And now I can just minimize this a little bit. And in my real component, I just want to change from my Axios implementation to my fetch implementation. Let's just see if we don't forget this set loading that we changed. So I will just go ahead, put this like that, and I will just change the loading to be ++, and this one will be -1. So now if I run and I save, just to make sure that we will really run it with fetch, and if I run my test now, you will see that everybody will going to pass. Not everybody, every test is going to pass, which means that it doesn't matter if you are now using fetch or Axios, your tests are completely independent from there. Just imagine the power that you have creating tests like this. In the future, if some new API appears, you are 100% safe, because as I said in the beginning of the video, we are mocking the HTTP call itself, not Axios fetch or any other fetching library. Next week, I will create a very small video just to show you how you can handle this type of scenarios in stuff like use SWR and React query, because they cache results. So you will have results cached from one test to the other. And I will just do a very short video to show you how you can clear it in both SWR and React query to have isolation between tests. A bit like what we did in this test over here with the reset handlers for MSW, but we need to do something specific in case of SWR and React query. So I hope to see you next week. I hope you enjoyed this video and click on the like button, and I see you very, very soon. Bye bye!